Hello, Dwayne Groom here, your guide. So how is this productivity challenge coming along for you? By now, you should have created some great habits. You know, we've come a long way since lesson 1. Last week, we went over how to convert a stall into an objection, and once we had the objection, we went over the objection handling steps. Then you role-played how to handle 8 different objections. My main objective last week was to make sure that you don't fold like a cheap lawn chair on the appointment, and remember, doing something as opposed to nothing will always get you further. And today is another great lesson. Today is about business operations. Number 7 on the keys to success. We will talk about self-promotions, building a team, your finances, how to think like a business owner, and we'll wrap it up with the buyer presentation. So let's get started. As I said, the 7th key to success is business operations. So I have 5 facts. Number 1, you are not just salespeople. You are business owners, and I'd like to refer to you as that. Number 2, relationship sales is the way to do business. People buy people. Number 3, focus on repeat business. Remember, 1 deal turns into 7. Number 4, the 90-10 rule. The top 10% know that customer service is the key. And 5, invest 25% back into your business. And a third of that for advertising so people come to you. Now let me take a few minutes to go over some tips on self-promotions. Number 1, put your picture on everything. Number 2, use the 50-50 rule and include your company. Maximize your investment with your company, actually. Number 3, look happy. If you can, include your family. 4, use a full-body photo if possible. You know, on a business card, you may not be able to fit it on there. You might. Use your own discretion. Number 5, highlight your name and your direct phone number. Number 6, include your name in a tagline. Number 7, include an emotional message. And in class today, we would have gone over a few examples for you there. Number 8, use the we word a lot. Remember the 50-50 rule about your company. Number 9, ask for referrals. And a good example is, especially upon key release. You know, people are so excited about moving into their home. At that point, you could just say, if you don't mind, I was wondering if you knew of anybody else that might be thinking of buying or selling either now or in the near future. Number 10, use statistical information. Some people just love that stuff. That's great, especially for pre-list. Number 11, have value in all your newsletters. Have value in all your marketing pieces. For example, real estate information, calendars. People love calendars as well. Recipes are fun and crossword puzzles. Number 12, especially for your business cards, use a heavier stock paper. 13, always get a final proof. I don't know how many times I've just looked over something real quick and, you know, even though you might even final proof it, maybe get a second person to final proof it. It'll only save you money in the long run. 14, be consistent with your look, brand yourself, and on your deliveries, meaning if you have a newsletter that's going out on a regular basis, or an e-flyer, or an e-zine, or an e-newsletter, whatever you want to call it, even when you're going on holidays, don't pull back on your marketing. Keep it going, especially for when you go on holidays, because you don't want to come back to a slump. And number 15 is you could celebrate people's birthdays. You could remind people about their anniversary, especially the husbands. They'll think, oh boy, you saved my life. And have some fun with people's holidays as well in your marketing pieces. Let's move forward here on how you build a team. And the ingredients we have for that is this. Number 1, license all team members. They can do more for you. Delegate everything. Number 2, stay focused on building inventory. Now, we gave you 10 ways to generate leads. Listings are the way to the top. It always has been, always will be. 3, it is no longer me, it is we. Number 4, lead by example, especially dressing like $1 million. 5, never run by the seat of your pants. 6, consult your broker or manager who supports you already and has already built a team. Number 7, do not recruit from within, recruit from the competition, unless you get permission to recruit from within from your broker. For example, they spent some time and money in attracting new agents to their office. And for you to get somebody to join your team after they spent that time and effort, they might not like that too much. Whereas if you brought somebody else in from the competition, they'd be thrilled. But you know what? If you check with them, they might even say that they do have someone in mind. Now remember this, businesses that fail to plan to fail. Number 8, create a manual for each position. Now, as a real estate agent, when you're new into business, there's actually 2 positions you're filling. You're filling your executive assistant position as well as the real estate agent position. And I have a couple ideas for you here. For example, number 9 says, keep track of what you do for about 2 weeks. So what I'd like you to do is go out and do what you're supposed to do, what we've taught in the productivity challenge here, and keep track of everything for a couple of weeks. And then remember what I said, you want to know exactly how much you're worth and how much you would pay for an assistant. So you separate the duties that you had done over the last 2 weeks in those 2 categories. And in the category where it's $10 or $20 an hour activities, you'll create a manual for all of those activities. And this way, number 10 is that you've created the position before you hired. Number 11, create a team that's independent of you, not dependent on you. 12, use big rewards and have big goals for everybody. You can have short-term goals and long-term goals, but make it so that everybody's excited. Pay off so they're so excited about each month, each quarter, each year. Number 13, have weekly reports and accountability. You're better off to inspect than to expect. 14, praise in public and critique in private. And 15, invest in training and technology. See, TEAM stands for this. Together, everyone achieves more. Now, with regards to money, you know, we have to have a business mind. And one of the things you have to focus on is this. Take care of your business so that your business will take care of you. So as I said earlier, you want to put 25% back into your business. What's left, divide it as follows. 10% to create a passive income, 10% for education, 10% for savings, 10% for fun, 10% to give away, to donate, and 50% to live off of. Now, remember this, financial freedom occurs when your passive income is larger than your expenses. And we're trying to create some habits here. And there's a saying that Warren Buffett said that the chains of habit are too light to be felt until they are too heavy to be broken. So your business is not a job. In fact, there's 3 factors to help you make a fortune in business. For an entrepreneur, first thing you have to do is have the right you. The next thing is the right knowledge. And of course, you need the right time and the right vehicle. Now, we're in the marketing business. We need to market ourselves. And as a side note, I just want to make sure you understand that you do not serve money. Money actually serves you. So I'd like you to self-commit to a few things. I'd like you to self-commit to an extra 20 or 30 minutes a day on a few things. 1, learning how to invest. Number 2, maybe even starting to invest, like buying real estate. And who has the best leads? If you're prospecting, guess what? Your leads are the best. The next thing I'd like you to do for self-committing is to self-commit to putting money, any amount, into a jar or a bank account every day. And what I'm trying to get you to do is create the habit. Now, I've taught this many times, and some people have said, I don't have any money to put in. See, to create the habit, it's not about the amount that you put in. You could be putting in a penny or a nickel or a dime or finally $1 or finally $5. But all I can tell you is this, if you've created the habit and the abundance is starting to come, you're going to be able to save a lot better if you've got the habit in place. All right, so let's get into the buyer presentation now. I have a couple of keys to go over. The first key is make sure we've scheduled a face-to-face meeting back at the office. Now, back in lesson 3, I went over a couple of techniques to be able to get their attention and close for the face-to-face meeting. Number 1 is you might mention to them that you're looking for a specific type of home, and they always say yes. And number 2, using the iceberg technique, you mention to them that the newspaper, the real estate newspaper, only has a few hundred properties, and MLS has thousands, so come on into the office. The second key is this. When they show up, and the reason you want to have it at your office is, if you've booked a couple of appointments with buyers throughout the week, there's the odd time that there's a no-show or a cancellation. So you could be in there doing other things, other activities, and I recommend that you don't get anything put together until they actually show. Now, the front reception might call and say, hello, Dwayne, your 4 o'clock appointment is here. You say, thank you. I'll let them know I'll be right there. And you confidently walk to the front of the office. Once you get there, smile, shake their hand, and pay them a sincere compliment. Then take them to the client room, sit down, and small talk. Now, think about this for a second. This sounds very familiar to the listing presentation. You pull up in front of the house, you're focused, strut to the door with an air of confidence, ring the bell, smile, pay them a sincere compliment, take them to the kitchen table, sit down, and small talk. The buyer part is no different. It's just that you're at your office. Once real estate is brought up, remember this, though. You need to sell yourself first, so don't forget. And then once real estate is brought up, move to the sales process. That's the buyer's sales process. Now, the sales process is something you want to go over with them. And as I said in class, I recommend that you create a buyer presentation, another book. So when you're sitting in the client room, as soon as real estate is brought up, you flip open the book, and the first page is the sales process. Now, there's 8 steps there. And you're going to just go over it with them, just to make them feel comfortable. You're just going to say, here's what we're going to do. And when you finish telling them what you're going to do, you'll say, so if you don't mind, can I start with those questions? The first thing I want to do is this. Let me do it for you. The first thing I wanted to do is go over the qualifying questions. This will save us some time, and this way I can find out what you want to accomplish. The second thing we're going to do is I'm going to go into the buyer services. You can look at it like one-stop shopping, but it's going to show you how we get the job done. Number 3 is we'll make a decision, a mutual decision, basically to see if we're going to work together. You have to have agency spelled out right here. And then at that moment, if they decide that they want to hire you and only you to help them find a home, and you decide you want to work with them, you would get agency signed and then move to step 4. Don't start looking for properties, selecting properties, and doing a whole bunch of work until these people have committed to you. Number 4, you would select and then go view properties all at once, the same night. Number 5 is return to the office, answer all their questions, and then move to step 6, which is the buyer cost sheet. Go into the monthly payments and the costs and the down payments and the deposits. Step 7, after you've written the office, you would go and negotiate on their behalf, present the offer and negotiate, logically, of course. And 8, you have a follow-up program so you can keep in touch. Build a relationship for life. That's how one deal turns into 7. So after you've gone through the sales process, like I said, you would end with, can I start with those questions now? And in class, you would have role-played this. So let's pretend I said that. So if you don't mind, can I start with those questions? They say, sure. Step 1 of the sales process is the qualifying questions. Now, make a note of this. The first 7 are the bona fide buyer appointment questions from lesson 3. You would use them here if they are not qualified. If somebody was just on the phone with you and they say, can I come in right now? And they came in and they were not qualified, you would ask these questions, okay? Now, the questions again are this. Number 1, where are you presently employed? Number 2, how long have you been there? Number 3, what is your yearly income? Number 4, what are your monthly expenses? Number 5, who do you bank with now? 6, have you talked with them? Number 7, have you had any credit problems? Now, this question here is the one that will determine if it's a 1-stop or 2-stop, depending on how they react. Now, remember this. You do not have to ask all the questions, but you need all the answers. So again, if they're pre-approved, you don't have to ask all those questions. The mortgage broker would have just told you they're good to go. So if they are good to go, when they're at your office on the buyer appointment, you would start with question number 8, which would be, how much were you planning on spending on your new home? Now, one of the things I want you to understand is that we need to talk a little bit about upselling because, you know, people are always a little bit reserved on how much they want to spend. They usually will tell you a little less than they might be willing just so they could save a few dollars. So upselling is just to try and get them to open up to the possibility that they might have to spend some more money. So question 9, you might ask them, does this include closing costs? Some people just haven't got that in mind, and that could cost thousands as well. And number 10, if you needed more, would it even be possible? So you'll get your yes or no. And number 11, would you consider a higher price range? Now, nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? You may as well ask because they might say, well, we're hoping to be in this range, but we'll have to go out and see what it's like. And if it's not quite what we like, we might have to go up to the next range. If they're willing to work with you and open up, that's great. Number 12, tell me what type of home you are looking for. 13, are there any features you could live without? And number 14, If we find the right home today, are you ready to buy? Before I talk about 14 again, I just want to go back. Remember how you ask questions like a top producer. You ask the question, you listen, you write down the answer, and you move on. Don't stop and start talking about what their answer was, okay? So back on 14 here, if we find the right home today, are you ready to buy it today? If they answer no, we must find out why. If they answer yes, we'll move to the buyer services. So what if they say no? Number 14, if we find the right home today, are you ready to buy it? No, actually, we're not. Now, if they're qualified and they've given you their criteria, you're going to put it in a database, and everything seems to be moving forward, you say, well, why is that? And they might say, well, my mom and dad actually wanted us to go out and start shopping and pick the one we like, and then they wanted to come and see it. This one is fairly common, and you're going to actually have to take a few seconds to educate them on why this isn't in their best interest. You might say this. You'd say, you know what, I really appreciate that, but I have to let you know that one of mom and dad's jobs is to protect you. Would you agree with that? And they say, sure. And you say, well, when you just bring them one property, and prices have been going up since the beginning of time, and when they see a property that is in a neighborhood that 20 years ago or 30 years ago they could have bought for 10 times less, as soon as you show them that, they're going to say, no way, you can't buy that. 30 years ago we could have bought that for, and they say a number that's just so ridiculous. They actually need something to compare to for them to be able to understand it as well. So when you explain it to the buyers that it's in their best interest to bring mom and dad along so that they can see what you're comparing to, when you pick the one, hopefully they'll respond like this and say, well, you know what, prices have sure gone up over the years, but you've got the best one out of the bunch. Now, as I said, if they answer yes, we just move to the buyer services. So step 2 of the sales process is the buyer services. Now, don't forget, we have some components that we need to remember here to be able to go over these services that we have. One thing is that we have 4 salesmanship ingredients. So remember this, the 4 salesmanship ingredients were saying their names, make sure that you're asking questions, there's some visuals to back up the services, and have the right F and V, which is the right facial expressions and the right voice inflections. Also, we want to make sure that we're always using the fact, benefit, close, takeaway, FBCT. For example, fact, ABC is a strong supporter of the MLS system. And the benefit, which means to you, is that when you put your criteria in the computer, it will cross-reference your needs with every listing in the city. And your close would be, you can see how this would benefit you, can't you? And right there, that might be fine with them. But you know what? You might have to use the takeaway. Imagine if you didn't use this system. It would sure take a lot longer to find a home, wouldn't it? So here, let me just go over a couple of buyer services that may be applicable in your area. And as part of your assignment, I would really like you to put together your buyer services so you can go over your benefits to buyer agency or buyer agreement. Number 1, real estate agents have a face-to-face meeting. Number 2, your agency relationship is explained. Number 3, you do an MLS property search. 4, in-house financing is available to help the buyer save some money. 5, pre-approval is arranged. That's very important for writing an offer. 6, show them other potential properties to compare to. 7, you'll work out the purchase price, including the monthly payments. 8, comparative market evaluation is supplied so they know where to start with their offer. 9, you'll write the offer. 10, you'll negotiate on their behalf, logically. 11, follow through to the possession. So as soon as the offer is pending or they've agreed on the price, you're going to follow through right to possession. And then finally, 12, you have an after-sale follow-up. Note, all these services are no cost to the buyer. That's how you attract the buyers when you're talking to the sellers. But to the buyer, you let them know that it's no cost to them. Okay, so again, how many steps did we have in our sales process? 8, right? So we went over the first one, the qualifying questions. We went over the second one, which was the buyer services. And now let's just talk about the third one. Step 3 is a mutual decision. In step 3, I mentioned it earlier, and just to repeat it again, we're going to explain agency, relationship. We're going to have the buyer agreement signed, and then we'll move to step 4, where we'll select and then go view some properties. Now, let them, not you, select properties to view. See, this is the difference between showing 5 and 10. And you know how I know this? Let me ask you, do any of you have or have you had a teenage daughter? I have. Now, if you ever go shopping for them and bring back the clothes, for example, if it's clothes, back to your teenage daughter, what do? So you say, here's some jeans I bought you. They're like, no way. You know what? You could have even give them the money. They could buy the same jeans, but just because you did it, they don't like it. Am I right? Now, think about this. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over, but expecting different results. So do this. Go to another part of the office to book the appointments after they've selected the properties and get the showings for the same night. But how do you do that? What we need to do is sell the seller or the agent, the listing agent, on the now showing. Okay, so you've gone to another part of the office. You're starting to set up your showings. How do we sell the seller or the listing agent on the now showing? Well, here's some possible dialogue. Now, let me know if all of this is true or false, all right? First of all, the possible dialogue would be this. So you're calling and you're talking to the listing agent or the homeowner, and one of them says, we don't want to have any showings tonight. We've got company. Or we just don't want to have any showings tonight, whatever the reason is. Say this, we might have a problem. By the way, is that true? Number 2, you might say, you're still serious about selling, aren't you? 3, the buyers are with me right now. That's true. Number 4, they told me that they're ready to buy today. That's true. They did say that earlier. Now, that's why you don't want to be sitting with the buyers when you're talking to the sellers to set up the showings, because listen to 5, 6, and 7. Number 5, they asked to see your house. That's true. Number 6, they also asked to see a few others. That's true. And 7, finally, is this. I have a feeling that they're going to do something today. Could you do me a favor just this once? We just need a little window to pop in between 7 and 7:30. It will only be a few minutes. Now, let me just go over the possible dialogue again. I just wanted to set up the showing tonight for around 7. Would that be possible? They say, no, we don't want any showings tonight. Well, we might have a problem. You're still serious about selling, aren't you? Yes. Well, the buyers are with me right now, and they told me they were ready to buy today. See, they asked to see your house, but they also asked to see a few others. And I have a feeling that they're going to do something today. Could you do me a favor just this once? Great dialogue. So you get all the showings set up for the same night. Now, why do you think that's such an important reason? Well, let's pretend that you had 4 properties to see one night and 1 to see the next night. First thing that happens is the buyers are relieved. They're thinking, okay, this is great. I'll go see 4 today. We don't have to decide if we want anything, and we'll see the other one tomorrow. Okay, so then tomorrow, let's pretend it's tomorrow. So you show them the last one. They go, oh, no, I don't want this one. I really like the first one we saw yesterday. And I don't know why it always works this way, but all of a sudden you pick up the phone to call the listing agent for the property you saw yesterday, and guess what? Absolutely. There's already been an offer written on it. And then here's the thing, is when you tell the buyer that the other one has an offer on it, it's conditional, but it's, pending, or they've agreed on price, whichever way you look at it, they're upset about it. And by the way, who are they upset with? Even if you told them, maybe they need to tell you the night before. So here's the thing. You got to get all the showings for the same night. Now, you go out and you show 4 or 5 properties, they don't like any of them. Fine. Go back to the office, find out what they didn't like, do another search, and set up your showings for the next night if possible. So here's 6 tips on showings. When you're out there and you're looking at properties, what we actually need to do is just lower their expectations. So if it's gorgeous, just beautiful, just tell them, this one's nice. You guys might like this one. And if you know that the place is nice, you might say it's okay. And if it's okay, you might say, well, I think it needs a little bit of work. Here's an example. You say, I think this place needs a little bit of work from what I'm reading here. Now, if you've actually seen the properties, you can say, because I've seen it, it needs a little bit of work. Next thing you go, they're going over on the showing, expecting to see a whole bunch of stuff they have to do. They walk in and they go, oh, this isn't that bad. This place is okay. Finally, if it really does need some work, quite a bit, you might let them know that they get a lot more for their money on this one, or more square footage. Number 2, only take what you need. See, I really recommend that we don't focus on any highlight sheets. In fact, I would prefer if you didn't even bring them at all. The only problem is there's some highlight sheets at the properties. Now, remember this, houses sell houses. Okay. Now, when they're there, if they want to start reading the highlight sheets, I recommend you even mention to them, why don't I take that from you just for a moment? You can ask me some questions, but get a feel for the house. Go through the house here, and then we'll go back to the office. We'll go over all the questions you have. But take a talking notepad with you. Here's a good tip for you, gang. What I'd love to see you do is full paper size talking notepads almost like a business card with your letterhead in one corner and your identification, phone number, and all that on the other corner. And it's those ones where you can tear them off when you finish writing on them. And when you're talking to people, you're tearing off things. If any of them they want to keep or anything, you've got your 50-50 formula right on there. So you have your talking notepad, your clipboard. You might have a list of the houses you're going to view, the time and the price, and the listing agent. And like I said, I'd just really like to see you not focus on the highlight sheets. The best way to do that is back at the office. In fact, they're going to hit you with a technique that I jokingly say, they've learned at buyer training school. It's called the parking lot bailout technique. So I really encourage you to hold back as much information until you get back to the office. Let me move forward first, and then we'll talk about that technique that they mastered. So, number 3, when you're showing properties, you always want to turn all the negatives into positives and ignore their objections. Remember, again, realtors don't sell houses, houses sell houses. So if they're walking around and they're saying something like this, you're looking at a house that was built, in the 50s, I guess. And you go in there and they say, my goodness, these bedrooms are so tiny. And you say, well, you know what? The contractors back in these days were pretty brilliant, if you ask me. See, they can only build the houses so big for them to be affordable for people. And they said that most families spent most of their time in the kitchen. So they took a little bit of the square footage from the bedrooms and made the kitchens bigger. Next thing you know, you're looking at homes that were built in the 60s. And somebody says, oh my goodness, this kitchen is so tiny. And you say, yeah, well, look at the size of the bedroom. See, the contractors back then could only build houses so big, too. And they knew that back in the 60s, most of the people spent more time in the bedrooms. So they took anyways, I'm just kidding. So remember to turn all your negatives into positives and ignore their objections is very important. Like, again, I said in a few lessons ago, you go into a room, the room's too small. They said, our furniture won't fit in here. Just let them talk amongst themselves. Next thing you know, they emerge and they're saying, we're buying new furniture. And they're all happy. Number 5, watch for buying signals. So you're walking around and they'll go, do you know if they'll include the drapes? Ding, 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 ding. That's what you should be hearing in your mind. You're thinking, oh, it's a buying signal. And do you think they'll take less? Wow, that's a buying signal. What about, would they include the appliances? Would they include this? Would they include that? Watch for buying signals. See, number 5 says top producers are constantly closing. So when you hear a buying signal, you might start to say things like this. Well, you kind of like this one, do you? And 6, talk about anything but the house on the way back to the office. Why? Because we want to talk about the house back at the office. I've mentioned that. So when you're in the car, focus on driving. If they start asking you a bunch of questions, just say, well, you know what? Why don't we just wait till we get back to the office? I just want to focus on the driving, and we'll pull out all the sheets, all the highlight sheets, set them out on a table, and we'll take a few minutes. See, you've already prepared them to get ready to get back into the office. So that parking lot bailout technique I told you about might not even come up. But let's talk about it anyways. Step 5 says, answer all the questions back at the office. So, one of the best ways to eliminate the parking lot bailout technique is to get them to come to go in your car when you preview the properties. Also, less chance of getting lost, and so they're in your car. The only thing is they'll try the same technique in your parking lot. So if they've tried the parking lot bailout technique at a property because they have their own car or they're back in your parking lot, and you can tell it's coming, you'll just say, okay, well, let's head back in the office. And they go, oh my goodness, look at this. And it's like they role-played this. It's almost like they had a trainer come into their town and said, okay, let's show you guys a technique that will help you if you're buying properties. And we're going to role-play this. And they say, oh my goodness, look at the time. And they hit their watch a little bit and they go, I can't believe it. Honey, we got to get going here. Dwayne, I got to head home and iron my bowling shirt. So why don't we do this? I don't mind. Why don't you give me the highlight sheets? We'll head home. We'll look them over. And then what we'll do is tomorrow we'll give you a call. Would 7 be good or would 8 be better? And you're like, well, 8's fine. Here, instead what we need to do is have a counter to the parking lot bailout technique. You see, these people that went to a buyer training school, and I'm just kidding, right? They went to buyer training school, and the trainer said this. There's a little disclaimer we have to put across the bottom of the page for you. The disclaimer is this. The following technique does not work for any of the Productivity Challenge graduates. So isn't that great? So here's what we do. The first thing, I believe there's magic in threes. So the first thing we do is when we get back to the office, we've already prepared them to go over some information. So we'll say, why don't we head into the office, answer some of your questions. If they're ready, they'll go in there. If they use the parking lot bailout technique, you might say something like this. Well, let's go into the office and work out all the math so you can go home and have a discussion based on facts. It'll only take a few minutes. And the other approach, as I call it the save money today technique, is you could just say to them, is there any of these properties that you actually did like? And they say, well, we kind of like this one here. Okay. Well, is there any reason why you wouldn't want to move forward on that one? Well, it's kind of high. Well, you know what? And I always believe that any offer is better than no offer. Now, it's got to be realistic, though. I mean, anybody can write a lowball offer. But you can say, well, why don't we do this? If you think that it's actually worth a little less, I don't mind going in and trying. So let's head into the office, and we'll take the numbers you're thinking and just kind of look them over a little bit and see where we can go from that. And once you're in the office, casually answer their questions like you do it every day. Watch out for your body language as well. So how many steps again in the buyer presentation? That's right, 8. So we're on step 6. Once we've gone in there and we've gone over the questions that they have, it's time for us to take out our buyer cost sheet and go over the details. Price, down payment, monthly payments. Always talk payments based on full price. Step 7, again, we're going to write an offer and follow through to possession. Negotiate and present. And one of the things I want to make sure you understand is never present. We're going to talk about this in the next lesson, but never present in front of family or friends. Okay, that's next week. Now, step 8 is the follow-up program. Keep in touch, because one deal turns into how many? 7, exactly. All right, our weekly activity. Number 1, go to the office and prospect. Number 2, this is new, all right? Instead of go and book a minimum of 3 appointments, I want you to go on a minimum of 3 listing appointments. Number 3 is also different. What I want you to do this week is total up your program production page A-7. The day before next week's class, and I want you to fax it into your assistant team captain. That's the day before or the night before. And it's very important they get it so that when we start lesson 8, we've got all of the stats in advance. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to have a normal week. So when you come in, I want to continue to complete. This is number 4, and this is new, meaning that we're still doing it. Continue to complete your weekly report page A6 and hand it into your assistant team captain no later than 9:30. Normal weekly stats still apply, okay? Number 5, create an assistant operating manual. Take you to the next level. Number 6, open up an extra bank account or start putting money in a jar every day and create the habit. Number 7, create the buyer presentation and use it on all your buyer appointments. Number 8, schedule a minimum of 1 free day off. Maybe at this point we can start to do 2. What do you think? Number 9, listen to Lesson 7 CD a minimum of 3 times. And I have an old poem I want to read to you as we wrap up. Fair enough? All right, it goes like this. I bargained for life for a penny, and life would pay me no more. As I sat in the evening and I counted my scanty store. For life, you see, is just an employer. He'll pay you just what you ask. But once you set the wages, why, you must bear the task. I work for a menial hire only to learn in dismay that any wage I would have asked at a life would have willingly paid. Have a great week.